What's up everybody, how's it going? This is the Hat Person again from GGHF Fun, and here's my review of Undertale for PS4 and PS Vita. So as always, let me give you the short version and the long version of the review. So the short version goes like this. This is easily one of the greatest games I've ever played. It's pretty short, but I've played through it more times than I can count. It has made me laugh, it's made me cry, feel anger, feel fear, melancholy, happiness, all of the emotions with this game. Undertale is certainly something that has a lot to say and says it very intelligently by fusing gameplay and story in a way that really makes you question how you play games in general. It really is something special. I think that you can't die and leave this mortal realm without playing Undertale. You gotta play Undertale. It really is something special. It's awesome. And now the long version of the review is as follows. Ever since Undertale was released on September 15th, 2015, I still haven't found anything more captivating, fun, and impactful than it. This small kickstarted RPG by Toby Fox eventually exploded into a phenomenon on PC, loved by even the most cynical of game critics. Now, Undertale's popularity has grown so much that it is now being ported to the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita. It's pretty much exactly the same as the PC release, save for some small details. That doesn't stop it from still being an amazing experience worth living, if you haven't already. Now, for the uninitiated, Undertale is essentially a story about a human child that falls into a hole that takes him to a world of monsters underground. There you meet a big amount of colorful characters that will either help you or stop you from finding a way back home. So on the surface, it's a pretty simple setup, but everything starts to get a lot more complex as time goes on. Sometimes maybe a little bit more scary. You think, oh, this is a very simple story, you know, you just go through all the characters, obviously there's some enemies, beat them, and you move on, right? Well, no, things start to get pretty crazy the more you play through it and the more you play through the game multiple times. Depending on how you play the game, everything that you see in Undertale is completely recontextualized to what your attitude or perspective is. Not only that, but the game always remembers everything that you did, even after starting a brand new playthrough. If you do something that can be considered evil, you can't just reload a save and pretend it never happened. Characters will literally confront you about what you did and comment on it, which can sometimes delve into horror game territory that leaves a lasting impression. Again, depending on all that you do. Now that's what makes Undertale very special. It uses the fact that it's a video game to its advantage. There are most indie games out there that tend to use the whole fourth wall breaking thing as a source of comedy or parody. Where it's like, ha ha ha, your princess is in another castle, remember that from that other game? This is a video game, ooh, you know, like Looney Tunes style. But here, it uses that idea, that self-awareness of being in a video game, instead of making you laugh, well, sometimes making you laugh, but is mostly used for communicating in unique ways that only video games are capable of doing. Instead of being all goofy funny with it, it uses all the self-awareness to further enrich the world of Undertale. Because of this, there isn't a single movie or a TV show adaptation or a live action thing or a theater play or a novel or an anime or nothing. There's nothing that can accurately portray what Undertale is all about, because if you do all those adaptations or movies or whatever, it takes away the most important thing that makes Undertale very, very special, and that's you, the player. But anyway, speaking of having a lot of charm, this is an incredibly funny game as well. Despite Undertale having some more than serious moments, it mostly revels in comedy and lighthearted situations. Every character has their own unique trait that sets them apart from everyone else, and seeing all of them interact with one another is a delight. Even in battle, you'll bump into some pretty charming monsters that'll stick with you way after the fight is over with, even if you only see them once. It is very clear that a lot of care and attention was given to make everyone seem interesting and show that they have a history with the setting. Character-wise, nothing ever feels out of place, and whatever does feel out of place contains a purpose that serves to make the story a lot more engaging. Now, of course, we can't really talk about Undertale without acknowledging one of its strongest points, which is the combat system. As I mentioned before, this is a very funny game, which is something that also bleeds into the fighting. There are many hilarious fights that are solely grounded on who the enemies are as characters and how they make sense of the world, leaving every single fight unique and a blast to play. Every single character has its own attack patterns that you have to figure out in the moment, so there's never any trick or routine to defeating anyone. You can tell that Toby Fox was getting really creative when it comes to the battles, because there's so much variety everywhere, to the point where people have been making comparisons to WarioWare, in the sense that there's always like small little mini games that you kind of have to get through to be able to win a battle. It can range from very simple stuff like, you know, a dog jumping towards you so you gotta dodge it, or it can be really wild stuff like Toho style bullet dodging where there's bullets everywhere and you gotta like, you know, move around to be able to dodge them all. Or sometimes it's something totally different like a quiz show or you know, sometimes the game is recording what you're doing and then they rewind it, so you have to like go through the whole thing backwards again. It's awesome. You always gotta be on your toes. There's never like any strategy to beating all of them. Just, you know, think in the moment and just figure it out as you go. Most of the time, the game encourages you not to kill anyone, but instead to engage in conversations that can calm the enemy down, which leads to being able to spare them. It is very reminiscent of Shin Megami Tensei, which is another franchise that heavily relies on negotiating with enemies instead of simple brute force. Of course, if you wish to kill everyone that stands in your way, then you're free to do that as well, but that also comes with its own share of consequences. Remember, the game remembers everything. Regardless of what you decide to do in your playthrough, everything will be accompanied by one of the greatest video game soundtracks I've heard in a very long time. There isn't a single track that I don't like or haven't grown to eventually love. Filled with variety, impact, and creativity and leitmotifs, Undertale provides fantastic music that ties the whole thing together into a more cohesive experience. This is then taken to the next level with all of the boss fights, which have the best tracks in the whole game. You know, Papyrus's theme, Toriel's theme, Asgore's theme, all of those are really, really awesome. That definitely goes the extra mile in comparison to all of the other songs that you hear in all of the different maps. That's just the part where all of the tension and the action and the story really reach one of its highest points, so of course the music is going to reflect that. Of course, I'm singing the praises of Undertale right now, but, you know, me being me, I don't believe that there is such a thing as a perfect video game. Only games that come very close to it, and Undertale is definitely one of them, but that doesn't, you know, forgive it from having some shortcomings and a few flaws. Undertale still has a few things going on that might be worth improving upon for the future, starting with the visuals. The pixelated, almost Super Nintendo style of graphics don't bother me at all. In fact, I actually quite like it. The problem I find, however, is that there's an inconsistency in its visual design throughout the game that makes many areas clash with themselves in a way that's not favorable. So let me give you an example. If I showed you a screenshot of the ruins, and then another one for the battle system, and then another screenshot for one of the shops in the game, without you knowing anything about Undertale, would you tell me that these three screenshots are all from the same game, or are they from three totally different games? I mean, the font of the text might actually give it away, but, I mean, at least when I'm trying to visualize, hey, I'm a guy that's seeing this game for the first time and then see three random screenshots, I feel like I would be very confused. I'm like, wait, these three are the same thing? Well, like, they look totally different. Something is in black and white, and then the other one is totally in color, and then some things have more detail than others. It is a little bit of a mess. Now, of course, because the game is so popular now, of course you're gonna say that the three of them are from the same game, right? But, again, from the perspective of somebody that doesn't know anything and then goes into it, there might be some confusion. Some images have detail while others don't, some parts are in black and white while others have color, some parts look like a basic Super Nintendo title while others look like a modern indie game. This indecisiveness on how the game wishes to present itself can leave players a little bit disoriented, or at least have a rough time defining what the game's art style is supposed to be, or what they're trying to communicate through it. This is accentuated even further when the PS4 and PS Vita versions provide you with the beautiful hand-drawn borders on the screen that also clash with the pixelated look of the game. Not the biggest problem in the world, but it's definitely worth mentioning. Even within all of these small imperfections, you can discover something new every time you play through the game again. Initially, the game might feel a little bit too short or almost on rails if you decide to put your brain on autopilot and just finish the game in the same manner you would anything else. However, do take note that the game remembers everything you do, and also reacts to who you are as a player. There will be many moments where characters will show different sides of themselves depending on how you play, or sometimes miss out on entire events because of certain decisions you make. This is not just a game that you can beat once and call it a day, which is probably why it's not that long to begin with. There is an enormous amount of stuff to dissect in between the beginning and the end that can leave one astounded at the subtlety of it all. Even after many playthroughs, I am sometimes still caught off guard over things I didn't even know existed in the game, which makes it disturbingly fascinating, almost as if the game was an actual living, breathing thing that reacts to you. I know, that sounds crazy, but that's just kind of the sense that I get. In conclusion, after 2 years of Undertale being out, I think the game still holds up pretty well. This game is legendary. It will most certainly still be talked about far into the future. It is certainly a game that has to be experienced to be believed. It pretty much takes everything that you know about video games and questions why you think that way and why you make the decisions that you do. It pretty much takes everything that you know about video games and challenges you and questions you about it, right? It takes all of that common knowledge, all that common sense, and then just asks, well, why? Why do you do that? Why do you think, oh, everybody should do this, right? Because that's what you do in a game. Well, it decides to flip that on his head and be like, well, actually think about what you're doing. Why are you doing this? For what purpose? On the surface, it is a very charming, funny, lighthearted little game, but the moment you start to dig even a little deeper, it becomes emotive, impactful, thought-provoking, unlike a lot of games that I've played in the past. Even stuff like Mother 3, stuff like The World Ends With You, other games that have really touched me, I'm like, yeah, awesome, but you kind of see it coming, right? With Undertale, not so, and that's what makes it even more special. For hardcore fans that have already played Undertale, there really isn't anything new to see here other than the Dog Shrine, but I highly recommend newcomers to try the game out. Now that you can take this game on the go through a PS Vita or play it on a big screen TV on PS4, there's no excuse for you not to play this. You won't regret it. I'm sure of it. Go play Undertale. It's great.